When we are seeing organizations like Mercedes announce that they are going to accelerate everything they are doing with electric vehicles, we know that the trend is taking on really substantive form. It is accelerating. And I wanted to go behind the scenes of this particular issue today. And sometimes I like to do that with the smartest people I know. So I'm going to bring in Michael Bedley in a moment. Michael is someone that I met when I keynoted Siemens Global Energy Conference a number of years ago. When I got up on stage for this organization, I was saying such things as oil is over, carbon is dead, electric is the future, utilities need to align to a new reality. Michael saw me there, and he and I connected, and I've been following him ever since. He puts out a daily email with observations on what is going on in the energy sector, utilities and electric, and everything having to do with renewables. And I'm mesmerized by what he says. So I'm going to go over to the desk here and talk to Michael. And I want to give you just a few of the headlines that appear in his daily email. I'll read just a few of these out to you because it really gives you a sense of where his mind is. Renewables accounted for more than a quarter of all U.S. electrical generation in April. 25%. Most U.S. wind capacity built since 2011 is located in the heartland of the United States. I mean, we got this political craziness where Republicans are pretending that when the wind turbines stop, you don't get energy. Well, most of that energy is happening in Republican country. The Gulf of Mexico could become a hub for wind energy production in the future. One report, these are all headlines from Michael's newsletter. Report shows that California needs 1.2 million electric vehicle chargers by 2030. There is so much momentum behind this trend, it is staggering. And the EIA projects renewables share of a U.S. electricity generation mix will double by 2050. Michael, you've got some of the best insight I see with everything going on in this sector. And I want to, get your perspective on this headline involving Mercedes-Benz, electric vehicles, carbon, oil, all this stuff, and your key belief as to why you think this is going to happen faster than people think. Welcome to Headlines. Let's start out here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And I think it's fair that, I'm sort of hogging the screen. So let's give you a little bit of a bigger screen to go with here. Your background, what led you into this, and what do you do?
Well, Jim, start off, thank you very much for having me on. I'm glad to be here. A little bit about my background: spent 35 years in the power sector. For the last 10 years, I've been concentrating on EVs and penetration of the grid, what the makeup will look like in 10 or so years. How are we going to handle the cars? Where are they going to be located? How are they going to be charged? Are they going to be charged through renewables? What options does the consumer have? And how the manufacturers are moving quick and probably not quick enough to handle the demand today. The demand for electric cars is higher than production today. And that in itself is a driving force to go ahead and increase production.
Yeah, my wait time was 9 to 13 weeks from the date of the order of my car, and I accelerated it because one became available in inventory, and rather than wait another month, I just want to get the darn thing. And we saw the Tesla numbers yesterday, another blowout numbers where most people, were predicting that this company would go bankrupt, 3 or 4 years ago. So why, let's get to the basic premise of that question. Why is this going to happen faster than people think? Why are, internal combustion engines essentially over as, in terms of the future? Why is it going to be faster?
Jim, if we look at the real core of what's happening, and the bottom line is this: EVs in general are a better car. They have fewer parts. They have more flexibility for self-fueling, which means you can charge at home, thereby negating the opportunity to go to a fueling station. They have longevity, batteries, great lives, easy to operate. So when you add all that together, it's a driving force. That's not even before we start the clean part of it, where you think of there's no emissions, there's no smoke behind your car when you accelerate, and also there's no noise. With all these factors together, the key point that I think is not focused totally by the manufacturers, which may be driven by oil companies and others, is that the total cost of ownership of an electric vehicle is actually cheaper than owning an IC engine.
Yeah, and I've been following this for quite some time, and there's two fabulous things that I've seen recently. I saw a post from someone in a Tesla forum that 120,000 miles, and all he has done is he has changed his tires and changed his windshield wipers.
Right.
no other maintenance. And I've been reading the Tesla car manual, and the maintenance section is like a page long that essentially says that's what you have to do. I think that's going to cause massive upheaval and havoc and change and disruption within the automotive sector in terms of automotive repair and things like that. But the second one was something I saw after the Tesla earnings call yesterday. And it was a graph that put together the growth of Tesla production compared to the Model T. And it's totally in sync. And so I remember being at conferences 10 years ago where people were using that picture of the horses in New York City, carriage and buggy, and 10 years later it's all cars. And people were saying the same thing was going to happen with electric, and they were using that 10 years ago as an allegory for that happening. It didn't happen like that. Is it still likely to come about that quickly? Or, I mean, are we talking 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20, 50?
Actually, it'll come quicker. Let me read you some of the statistics that they believe will be in the dynamics for U.S. automobiles. They expect to have 20 to 30 million vehicles from the Energy Department on the road by 2030. Now, you may say that's a lot, but in reality, I think we can beat that tremendously because we produce about 9 million cars a year in this country. We sell about 17 million in the United States. So when you look at the penetration rate, we should easily get there with the held back by production. And you mentioned everything has to have a steeper production to meet the needs, lower cost, drive home more consumers, educate consumers. And one education of consumers is going to help is that when your neighbor is getting cheaper electricity at night to charge his car, and there's many incentive programs around the United States where you get cheaper charging at night, thereby it also saves you more money than charging during the day or charging at superchargers. So when you add that in, it'll drive the curve so much quicker. So ramping up production is critical to really drive home the 2030 date. I actually think many of the manufacturers will stop producing IC engines way before that if they can convert to an EV production facility.
But the big question, if the demand is going to come because the business model and the cost makes so much sense, can the car companies actually do it? Can Ford and GM and Chrysler and Mercedes and Toyota actually do this? Because this is an entirely different type of production. This is an entirely different type of vehicle. I've long said, and many others have said, that a Tesla is essentially like an iPad on wheels. It's a computer on wheels. So we're seeing the shift of car companies being car companies to being computer high-tech companies. Can they actually do it? Or if not, what are the barriers in the way for them right now?
Those are some of the barriers, as you mentioned. Technology, changing to a software-based with the platform of a car that's simply somewhat close to a golf cart if you actually think about it. It's got motors, a battery, and software. And if you look at all the software updates tonight, and one of the things that's beautiful about the cars we have today, especially the Tesla, is the downloading. So you get the highest level of software each week or every other week as you download. And as you'll see, as you have your Tesla, I have two, by the way. So when we look at all this out there, they're going to have to. It's a zero-sum game. The country's not growing. So if the country doesn't have growth, it's going to be the same amount of cars, and you're going to change production from IC engines to EVs. They're going to have to move that way for the simple point the demand is there. They're going to have to accelerate the movement to from IC engines to electric vehicles.
Do you think the mindset is there? Because I mean, as I watch Twitter and I watch a lot of discussion on this, I recently became aware of the fellow in Ford, a public relations executive who's just doing these crazy shots against Tesla and seems to have a mindset that they really don't have a future. We're going to do it in Ford. Can someone like Ford really do it when they have an attitude, a culture inside the organization that seems to be so negative about this? Or is there more than just the simple manufacturing complexity that's in the way?
Yes, I'm not an expert on corporate culture, but I can tell you this. It's going to be difficult to change a lot of employees from one function to another when think about it, all the engine manufacturers, all the parts and components to the engine which go away, all the milling, machining that goes away into purchasing motors which are installed in the car, that whole mindset of that whole group has to go away. So as they transition, yes, the ramp up is going to be very difficult, but I think they essentially have to get there because there's no other choice. When you have states like California that mandate 2030, but what's to say in 2 more years they might make that 2027? So all of a sudden, if you want to be in that market, if you're Ford, Toyota, Fiat, Chrysler, or other manufacturers, you have to move quickly. And quickly means you got to go ahead and change the culture immediately. And that's where guys like you come in, because it's happening way too quick and they have to jump on board.
So this is just like the awful COVID situation we find ourselves in. The science is moving forward really fast, and it's the ability of the people to keep up and accept that science that is the barrier. And I think that goes to that headline you had: the most U.S. wind capacity built since 2011 is located in the center of the country, in the Republican strongholds. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of politics behind electric vehicles. There's the coal rollers, the truckers driving around, just spewing out, the clouds of black dust, just to upset people with electric vehicles. What about the politics behind this? Are they just talking a game, or do you think that the Republicans truly recognize that this is an inevitable trend, and that really the future of the U.S. and a big part of the manufacturing sector needs to be a part of this to go ahead?
Well, ultimately, there's no way out. There's strong lobbyists from big oil and natural gas. Obviously, coal is on its way out just by form of technology. And let's talk about that. Maybe we can do a comparison. Coal is being displaced by wind. Natural gas is coming in to go ahead and flex the grid to provide power when wind and solar are not there. But if you add in the fact that coal is not flexible, the technology is outdated. Maybe that's the way we should look at the IC engine. I don't like to go to a fueling station. My wife prefers never to see a fueling station. That's a safety feature, a function, time consuming. We talk about the next gen coming up. What do they look at? What do they like? They like to have control of their destiny, know their pricing, not have exposure to higher price gas. If you think about all last mile vehicles in the United States and Canada, small trucks run less than 100 miles a day. Those trucks could easily be filled with electric at night on slow chargers without very little infrastructure. We can get to infrastructure in a little bit. Without any infrastructure, displacing gasoline virtually overnight. So when those trucks are available and the production is available, Amazon, other companies that do last mile delivery, UPS, the United Postal Service is a wonderful place that needs to start, because they could use electric vehicles right away.
They'll just buy in bulk, because it's going to be the economics of the business case of electric that will cause them to convert to an electric truck fleet. But let's talk about skepticism. So I've spoken to a lot of trucking conferences. Volvo Trucks has had me in, several times over the years, Mack Trucks. And I remember talking about, trucks are going to go electric, and, people observing, well, not going to happen because batteries are heavy, and, the trucks are all about, carrying large loads. Is that, people would laugh at me for talking about electric trucks, but is that something that is going to be overcome easily? Is it that last, short delivery cycles that's going to drive it first? Will we really see electric trucks evolve as quickly as electric cars?
I think the answer is absolutely yes, because if you think about this simple point, once we get the semi-tractor trailer available in electric, those, especially Volvo, that have already changed their mind and are already going to a 2030 date and producing a tremendous amount of electric vehicles, if not earlier. But the systems such as FedEx and UPS, they can set up the charging stations, they can set up the network, so they can get there. So if they don't have the range they need, they can set up a charging station in between and manage it much different than gasoline. Long-haul truckers, they want to run long haul. That might be the last of the, let's call it the semi-tractor trailer business to fall. But if you look at EVs for the control of UPS, the Postal Service, others that are running short distance, maybe 200 miles from Orlando or New York to Boston, those can easily move to EV because it's a controllable distance. And they can save on emissions. Also, they get credits. And at the end of the day, the total cost of ownership will be substantially cheaper, and that's the key.
So what I'm really hearing here is for, guys like me and guys like you, the average person, looking for a car, it's just going to make so much sense to go electric, because cost of ownership and reduced repairs and lower cost of energy compared to gas. And the business case is so compelling. The same type of demand-driven shift is going to be driven by Amazon, the post office, and large fleets to take trucks electric. So it's a demand-driven trend. And
right.
Then we have the problem that car companies and truck companies aren't really prepared or equipped to satisfy that demand quickly enough. So what happens here? If we've got so much demand and a lack of production capability, what needs to be fixed to get us there?
That's a good question on the side from the truckers besides total cost, because I think so many of those companies are driven by the bottom line. However, we're starting to go green. So as they go and include their sustainability and their ESG objectives, they're going to continue to peel off the IC and displace that with electric, because they're going to be forced to by their stakeholders, by their shareholders, and by their the lenders. But we go back to the residential market, which will force the other market as there's more education. In the EV business at home, it's pretty simple. Your neighbor gets one, he learns about it, he loves it, he buys one, and so on and so forth. That education level is finally getting out there. And that'll go ahead and move to the next mile, which is the final mile delivery, local trucks, your local air conditioning company. Everybody comes back to the center at night. So why would you ever want to purchase gasoline? That one makes sense. It's going to happen. They can go green, save money, and that's the key. And it's no different than you look at our phones today and everything. The fact that we get so much productivity improvement, cost savings going green is the driving force, and that's getting closer and closer each day.
Yeah, so I know in my case, when we move at the end of the month to our new place, and it's got solar on the roof, and I'm going to have my electric car in the parking lot, I know the neighbors have got solar, and I know they don't have an electric vehicle, and I'll have that little discussion with them that, yeah, I'm getting my my energy from my car from the sun. That's going to make them go bing. You know, we want to be a part of that. So consumers are going to drive this. The automotive and trucking manufacturers have to catch up. You spend a lot of time with utilities. I've spent a lot of time with utilities. That's where we met, was a sort of at a utilities conference with Siemens. Are they ready? Do they truly understand, or are they just talking a good PR game? And how hard do they have to work to get the grid capable for this future, which is inevitable?
Well, the good news is the grid's ready today for the next 5 or 10 years. As I mentioned, 20 to 30 million vehicles by 2030 adds 4% of the total grid generation.
So it's really not a lot.
4% of total load. It's not a lot. Oh, if we do, how about this one? Here's a good a tidbit of information. If we took all the gasoline out of the country, 143 billion gallons, and changed it to electric, it'd be 25% of the electric grid. That's an important piece of information to realize that the electric fuel market, electric vehicles displacing petroleum, would only be 25% of the electric market. Okay? So it's not something that can collapse it. So 4% growth on these utilities today is not really relevant to their overall load. Plus, the infrastructure is there today. Charging at home, solar rooftop charging, and other areas where you can take advantage. An Amazon fleet, it has 100 trucks at night, puts power in at night. When they charge at night, load's low, it doesn't add more generation capacity for the peak day. So you have flexibility around that to integrate today. That's the beauty of it. You don't hear anybody buying an EV and say, oh, well, they don't have enough power in the area to support my EV. Well, they do. And ultimately, you need a $350 plug for your EV, and you're all set for level 2 charging, which is right below supercharging. So when we look at that, the grid is ready today. What are the utilities doing, you ask? They're starting to implement programs for off-peak charging, cheaper charging at night to incentivize usage. Think about it. Mm-hmm. They incentivize usage, thereby making more money. Putting chargers at grocery stores, I think the utilities will do that. And also, we're going to see some co-branding too as well, Jim. Why doesn't your restaurant have, or how about just a simple Kroger, when you're there an hour, you get an hour of free charging?
Yeah,
so
one of the trends,
but it's like a coupon.
Yeah, and one of the trends I noticed is 7-Elevens and fast casual and other retailers are starting to notice that people who are going for a supercharge are hanging around for 15-20 minutes, and they are underserved by food and retail. And what a perfect opportunity to place somewhere. So I think part of what is happening is we're going to be massively rethinking what they call the gasoline forecourt to this new electric forecourt, and we're going to see a lot of innovation with retail around those charging locations. So I mean, this just touches everybody. The whole trend that what is going to happen is automotive repair companies, Jiffy Lube, and all these fast lube companies, they're going to be hurt because the maintenance goes down. Automotive repair locations are hit because of the decrease in maintenance. And do you think far too many people are sleepwalking on all the scope of all the changes that come with this stuff?
Absolutely. I'll give you a great example. So on the Eastern Corridor, there's a gas station, a fueling and grocery store called Wawa. And I was in the Wawa, several of them, and they have Tesla charging in back. They just added it because they have parking in back, and they had 6 Tesla chargers. Well, the manager said to me, well, at first I was very concerned of having these 6 chargers here because it was going to add people. But he says, ultimately, they have to be here for 40 minutes. They spend more in the store than the gasoline side of the business. Plus, no inventory. Think about it. No environmental constraints, no broken nozzles, no control. So actually, they make more money on that than they do on the petro side per car. So it's a very, very interesting observation. But as you're seeing, the transition to co-marketing and co-branding is moving quickly.
But again, that's another part of it. It's a demand-driven shift. So that's somebody realizing that, hey, I got to put in more of these chargers because it's bringing in money. So that he or she is pushing, the corporate Wawa company to accelerate their activity because they're seeing positive returns. So demand-driven. This is so demand-driven. It's fascinating. What about the oil companies? We've seen BP, make big announcements that, we're going to be green and, we're going to do all these things and carbon is not our future. Are they just talking a game or do they truly realize the depth of the shift which is underway?
I think deep down in the organization, they truly understand the shift is coming. We are going to use less gasoline this year. Well, not excluding the bump than we have in past years, and it's going to continue to decline as you and others continue to use less and less gasoline or petroleum fuel. But when you look at that, you say to yourself, okay, it's going to have a continual decline. We're getting better efficiency because the choice of the consumer for an EV or an IC engine is based on cost, but it's also based on gas mileage. And what's not helping the oil companies today? The price of oil. Mm-hmm. It's just driving the next person to an EV because of the price we are at today. So you have that driving force. They're saying, we have a short-term issue here. Let's make the most we can if you're an oil company, but we have to transition. But what do you transition to? Power is generated mostly through renewables, 25% renewables, and then transitioning to higher levels of renewables. So how are they going to manage that business? Are they going to be in the energy supply downstream? I don't think they have anything there. BP's trying, Exxon's trying. They don't own a tremendous amount of wind to solar, but they're moving that direction. But the profitability of that product is much different than the oil and it is today. So they do have some staying power, but they're going to see continual decline in demand. And that's going to be evident as you see more and more those moving to EV. Also, another big pressure on the fuel suppliers, let's call them the integrated oil companies, is simply this: more renewables on the grid, less gas, less oil being burned, less oil and gas coming out of the ground. So it hurts them 2 places: EVs and more renewables.
Right.
So it gets them very quickly. They're being challenged on both sides.
And the renewables part of this is really interesting because I can barely keep up with all the reports from you and the tweets I see as to the continued collapse of the cost of solar and how much is generated by solar today at far lower cost than 10 years ago. Do you have some of those numbers at your fingertips? Because I don't think people truly appreciate that solar is now the least expensive form of energy generation on the planet by far.
Yes, I don't want to quote numbers because they're changing so quickly, and with the China tariffs, they've had a slight bump up. But when you look at the overall trend, it is lower. We're getting better capacity. We're getting better efficiency out of the units, including when you add everything together, and lower cost. This is even without any tax credits or associated with the U.S. government. So when we look at everything that's happening now in the future, we're going to see a continued decline. The good news about that is if we get a decline in price and better efficiency, therefore making the payout that much quicker, you're going to see them on more roofs, as in your area you have them. And for the utility scale, they're going to be everywhere, especially in markets that are heavily wind, as you mentioned earlier. Why? Wind is at night, solar during the day. They're very complementary. So as they get complementary, they help.
Right. Okay. So I'm going to want to start thinking about getting some wind in my house as well. And which brings to the third part of the pillar. And I don't have this in my new home, but I'm certainly thinking about it. Batteries. Let's talk about batteries because this is a trend that's near and dear to my heart. I've got a blog post I wrote years ago. The future of just about everything is all about batteries. And I took that picture of Dustin Hoffman with the older fellow from the movie The Graduate, where, back in the 60s it was, I have one word for you about the future, it's plastics. And I reframed it, I've got one word for you about the future, it's batteries. And batteries are sort of the missing piece in all of this, because it fills in a lot of the gaps that we have. Tell me about your perspective of what's happening with battery technology and why that's so important to the equation.
It's more important than you can ever imagine today, and on several levels. Let me just discuss one of them. Many solar energy users, including, say, Home Depot, Kroger, have solar roof. What they do is they manage their solar and their battery so that they can manage the power they purchase from the grid at the cheapest price. So during the day when they have solar, they're powered by solar. They also over generate, so they charge the battery. Then at night they use the battery to offset their energy purchase from the grid. So they can do that daily to minimize their bill or their capacity obligation on the grid. That's also going to be what you're going to do at home. As some of the incentives for net metering may go away around the country and have in a lot of the U.S. locations, battery will be used to do one, offset your usage, but also potentially offset the charging of your car. So if you can go solar, battery, battery to car, or any combination of that, plus provide you short-term storage should you have an outage. Many of us will generate, in our new homes, will build 2 or 3 battery packs such that based on the price of a home is not a huge amount of money, that you can manage your house for several hours, including up to 20 to 24 hours in one day, making it to the next day you get your full solar. So that provides redundancy and ability to have generation at home without having emissions or an IC engine.
Right, and the really interesting part of this is when I drive my new Tesla into my driveway, I'm in essence bringing a big battery into the driveway, and I could, as you just said, plug that into my solar and store that solar in the car, play with some economics, and do fascinating things. How quickly is that going to come about? Vehicle to grid connectivity.
Yes, V to G they call it. They're not there yet, but Honda, I think Toyota are all looking at that. However, the new Ford pickup has enough to power your home for 10 to 15 hours, and maybe even 20 hours, because they're going to have a plug off of it. I think the new Ford has 12 power outlets because it's just one big battery. So you can actually charge your home off of it. In other words, they're going to have a connection where you can connect to your breaker panel from your car. So it is there. It's going to be there for down days or air time if you have a potential outage. I don't know if it's going to be integrated to the grid, but it could be there for potential outages, and that's something that it's on the website right now, the new Ford. So we are getting there sooner than later. It has a very big battery, and it is an expensive car at this time. But again, you're buying a very large battery for that flexibility.
So that would imply you're somewhat impressed by Ford with their efforts. I mean, the challenge in this space, everybody talks about Tesla because they're so many miles ahead. Do you think Ford is next in the race in terms of what they're doing with skills and technology and understanding and business model, or is there someone else who is leading?
Well, I think ultimately Tesla we know is leading, but there's certain niche markets that Ford is a truck, makes a lot of money on their truck, has great demand for a truck, and I think there'd be huge demand for an electric vehicle. It's going to be very costly. That's one of the issues right now. However, I think many of their customers who believe in the Ford, Ford F-150 will be buying that product on construction sites because it gives you that flexibility. If you lost power, don't have it. You have to go to a site that doesn't have power. You can use your tools right off the car, or you can charge batteries or whatever you need.
Another demand-driven example. You've got a work crew on a site, no power, and we just plug it in the truck. Boom, there's power. Well, I'm getting one of those because I can't get that with my internal combustion engine Ford 150 truck. So there's just so many pieces coming together here.
Yes, there is, and it's amazing, and it's like you said, it's happening faster because everything's being announced. I think what the big oil and the big car companies today should focus on what's really their market. Their market may be trucks. Their market may be SUVs. It's hard to be a specialist in all these areas because, listen, you bought a Tesla probably for one reason. It feels good. It's a full-size car. It's environmentally friendly. It has total cost of ownership is very inexpensive or lower than a car of equivalent price. But at the end of the day, we're to the point now we have vehicles we want to drive. Years ago, electric vehicle was a vehicle we had to drive because that's all the market was. It wasn't comfortable. It was small. It didn't have range. Now you can have anything you want. You want 400 miles of range, you can buy it. the Ranger's going to have, I'm sorry, the F-150, I think or the new Tesla may go over 500 miles of range, the Plaid. So when you look at all these options, if they focus where their specialty is, we can get everybody to have what they want, because that's the point. There needs to be a pickup truck today that somebody can use. Say, I would love to buy an electric vehicle, but it's just not there yet.
Mm-hmm. But it will be there sooner than people think. What about new entrants to the market, like Rivian? We see a lot of Rivian. They were there at the launch of I think it was Richard Branson or Jeff Bezos' launch into space, and we've been tracking them. Are they going to be indicative of the types of new companies coming into this space? Are we going to see more of that type of innovation, or is it too big a capital investment?
It's a very large capital investment. Probably the names you have out there now, unless there's someone like an Apple or Amazon that's going to back it. Remember, it's difficult to build a car.
Right.
It has tremendous amounts of parts. I don't care if it's electric. It needs to have integrated facilities, stamping machines. Even if you buy an old plant, how do you compete? Then you have a design team. Tremendous amount of years. You look at, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Tesla's been a public company for 14 years, something like that. And when you look at all the times and all the total shifts they've had in their production and what they were doing, it takes a lot of time and energy. I think the companies will be there today will either merge or get support from a larger company, focus on their specialty. If you're a trucking company, if you're a car company, if you're Tesla's different because they have a huge advantage from their software and battery plant. But others, I think, are going to focus on what they do best. If you're a sports car maker, you're a sports car maker. If you're a last mile vehicle manufacturer for the post office, you're going to produce that vehicle.
Right. So I golf with a fellow who's he owns a couple of Ferraris, and apparently Ferrari is making an electric vehicle. Going to be some outrageous price, but it's going to have 4 electric motors, one on each wheel. The ultimate. Let's last but not least, big ideas. I mean, you saw me speak. I think it was in Houston at the Siemens Energy Conference, and a guy like me, my job as a futurist is to get out there and present big ideas and challenge people with concepts that, the first reaction they're going to have is that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. And I think when I was there, I spoke about one of the topics which is floating around out there, and that is roads which charge your vehicle as you drive. I was with Dominion Energy in 2019, a board of directors session that they were having, and I was talking about that that's one of these crazy theoretical ideas that might come in the future. And then I pointed out that there was a Swedish organization who was doing exactly that. Will we actually see technology embedded in roads and highways that when I'm driving my electric car down the road, it's going to charge it? Or is that type of stuff too far-fetched, too science fiction?
I don't think it's too science fiction and too far-fetched. It's just a matter of time. We're going to get there. We're going to figure this out. The first phase we're probably going to see in the next 5 to 15 years is that homes may be disconnected from grids. Homes will start to supply their own power, charge their own cars, and be self-sufficient. So that's probably the first thing we're going to see, because if you look at you not needing the grid, if you home charge and have battery storage and solar on your roof, and that gets more efficient, or in your backyard, and you charge your own vehicles, then that disconnection goes, and the grid is a whole different animal. You don't have to touch it. You don't have to use it. And that goes back to your charging of the cars. If we have charging at home, do we need charging on the highways? Mm-hmm. Remember, 3% of the United States travels more than 100 miles a day. So we really want to focus on the fact that everybody goes home, everybody has access to a charger. You can charge cheap at night, then have control of your own destiny with your own infrastructure. Why not build my own gas station, I always say? My gas station's on my roof. Why would I ever want to buy from somebody?
I'm going to start
hedging against rising costs.
Yeah. I like that.
I think that's probably our first step, but I think we'll be charging at home. We'll be charging on the road eventually. Or we have such great batteries, we don't have to charge but once a week.
So when you get really excited about this topic, and I read your email every single morning, what do you think is the most exciting development occurring out there right now?
I just truly believe that we are seeing a country that's moving towards tremendous energy efficiency, including electric vehicles. We see a true change in consumer behavior to this. We're turning the corner, and it's going to accelerate rapidly. It's no different than iPhones or moving away from DVD to casting. Look at cutting the cable. I'm sure you work on that as well, on cable and delivery of home media. But when I see this, I see a transition that's going to come very fast, pushing manufacturers to ramp up demand quickly or transition demand. They don't have to ramp up the amount of cars they produce. They have to transition to the type of car they produce.
Right.
I see the home management of energy. Also, we haven't even talked about it, which goes to the Tesla tile. Once the Tesla solar tile or any equivalent product is on your roof, it's over, because it'll produce more power than you need, thereby shifting production from power plants to the home. Back to my whole point, you'll be self-contained.
Yeah, I've spoken to a lot of construction and building technology and infrastructure conferences along the way, and what's coming is the glass windows becoming solar panel technology. And as you say, as soon as that's commonplace, game over, because we're just going to have an absolute surplus of solar energy at a continuing rapid cost decline. So, I mean, I hate to use a phrase like this, but the future is bright. So, Michael, where can folks find you? How can they read what you are writing, which I find so absolutely fascinating each and every day?
Anybody can reach out to me on apexpower.com or mbedley at apexpower.com, and I'll get part of my newsletter and my releases and up-to-date information on markets, EVs, what's coming ahead, and other opportunities are out there. But I'll be happy to respond to anybody who comes in, or they can call me directly at my cell phone at 954-494-2739.
Fantastic. And I'm going to blog this, and I'll put that up in the blog link as well. And I know you and I, we've had a lot of conversations along the way, and we've said that what we really need to do is, as we get back to the real world, you and I need to get on stage together somewhere to talk about the future of all this stuff. And I can put out the big ideas and what's coming in our future, and then you can put the real meat on the bones with the statistics and the insight and the speed and stuff like that. So hopefully we will find that in our future at some moment in time. What I'm going to do to close off here is I'm going to run the video clip. This is a sample where I'm at a trucking conference, OmniTrax, which is a trucking software company, and this was in Phoenix, I think in about 2011, 2012, where I'm talking on stage about the emergence of Google as a car company, which eventually became the Tesla business model. We'll close off with that, and then Michael, if you want to hang on, and once I close the show, we can have a brief moment.
Okay, glad to be here again.
We have to appreciate that we live in a period of time in which a lot of people have big ideas on big change in big industries. And I'll tell you a little story, which is a really good example. 2003, it was brought over to Stuttgart, Germany. It was brought in by Daimler Chrysler. This was the newly merged group, Mercedes, Benz, and Chrysler. We had 10 auto executives from Mercedes, 10 auto executives from Chrysler, and Jim Carroll, the futurist. And our goal of this meeting was to define what is the auto industry going to look like in 2013? Who will be the players? What will be the technology? What will the industry look like? Do you know what they did during the very first hour? These engineers defined their future in terms of what the industry looked like in 2003. Their discussion went, well, we know Honda's going to do this, we know Ford is going to do this, and GM's going to do this, and Toyota is likely to do that. And I finally said to them, look, folks, things could change. You could find yourself competing with a company in the car industry in 2013 who is not even in the industry today. They said, that's not going to happen. And I'm thinking quickly, I said, look, we could have a couple of engineers at Google headquarters in Mountain View, California right now working with Google Maps. And one of those engineers says to another engineer, you know, this technology we built is really cool. We should build a car around Google Maps. They're going to have the car delivered to you via FedEx after you buy the car online through a website. I said it's going to come in a big box labeled the Google car. They're going to understand that they can get a lot of attention through viral marketing. When you open up that Google car in a box, you're going to discover the Google car party in a box. There's going to be hats and confetti and streamers and wine. You're going to throw a neighborhood party because you got the coolest car on the planet. How do you think these very serious auto engineers in Stuttgart, Germany are reacting to the idea of Google becoming a car company? Maybe what's going through your mind? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. And isn't that what happens when we're confronted by people who have big, bold ideas? Didn't even take 10 years, folks. Look at Tesla Motors. What they are doing is they are rewriting the rules of the automotive industry. Thank you very much, and have a great conference.
Thank you very, very much.